Cadet Rowan Parker stood at the viewport of the Galactic Defense Academy, watching the 3 moons of Xanthus Prime rise over the horizon. The Academy, a sprawling complex of gleaming metal and synthetic crystal, housed the most elite military training facility in the known universe. And today she was about to become its first human combat instructor. "You know they're all betting against you, right?" The voice belonged to her roommate, Trill, a 7-foot-tall avian with metallic feathers who had the uncanny ability to appear silently despite his size. "Of course they are," Rowan said, tightening her regulation ponytail. "The betting pool's up to 17,000 credits. I checked." "And you're not worried?" Rowan snorted. "About a bunch of aliens who think humans are fragile bags of mostly water? Please." She checked her appearance in the mirror. The standard issue instructor uniform, deep blue with silver piping, had been tailored for her human frame, which meant it was about 40% smaller than the average instructor's. At 5'7", she was considered alarmingly tiny by most galactic standards. "Your first class is advanced close combat, right?" Trill asked, preening his wing feathers. "With the 4th years. Those are the ones who've already chosen specializations." "Yep, the ones who think they know everything. Including Commander Krell's pet project, that Vextor guy." Trill made a sound that approximated a whistle. "I heard he broke 3 training drones yesterday." With his face. Rowan smiled. Not the pleasant, professional smile she'd practiced for her students. This was the smile that had made her drill sergeant back on Earth say she looked like a shark that had just discovered an all-you-can-eat buffet. Perfect. The walk to the combat training hall took her through the Academy's main concourse. Aliens of every description parted before her, not out of respect, but confusion. Humans were still relatively new to the Galactic Alliance. Most species viewed them as diplomatic curiosities rather than military assets. They were about to learn differently. The combat training hall doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, 26 alien cadets stood in loose formation. They represented 13 different species, from the 4-armed Quattros to the gelatinous Mubblers. All of them fell silent as Rowan entered. She took her position at the front of the room and activated the Academy teaching interface with a flick of her wrist. "Good morning, cadets. I'm Instructor Parker. Welcome to Advanced Close Combat, where you'll learn why the galaxy's most sophisticated warriors sometimes need to rely on the galaxy's most primitive fighting techniques." A draconian in the front row, all scales and muscle and attitude, raised a clawed hand. The motion was meant to look casual, but Rowan recognized the tension in the posture. This would be her first challenge. She smiled, that shark smile again. "Yes, cadet? You have a question before we've even begun?" "Not a question, instructor. An observation." The draconian's voice was deep, his words carefully chosen to convey maximum condescension. "I am Lieutenant Vextor. My specialization is in elite combat operations, and I've trained under Commander Krell for 3 cycles. With all due respect, I'm curious what a human could possibly teach us about advanced combat." A ripple of chittering laughter spread through the class. Rowan noted which students laughed and which looked uncomfortable. Information to file away for later. "I understand your concern, Lieutenant. Perhaps a demonstration would help clarify things for everyone." She gestured to the training mat at the center of the room. "Would you care to assist me?" Vextor's scales flushed a deeper red, a sign of draconian pleasure. He stepped onto the mat with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight. At 7 feet tall, with naturally armored skin and retractable claws, he had good reason for his confidence. "Should I restrain myself, instructor? I wouldn't want to damage Academy property." More laughter from the class. From the back of the room, a new voice boomed. "An excellent suggestion, Cadet Vextor." The students snapped to attention as Commander Krell entered the room. Like Vextor, he was draconian, but older and even more imposing. His scales bore the distinctive scarring of countless battles. "Commander Krell," Rowan acknowledged with a nod. "I wasn't expecting you to observe today." "I make it a point to evaluate new instructors," Krell said, his forked tongue flicking between his teeth. "Especially when they're teaching my best students. Please continue with your demonstration." Rowan understood immediately. This wasn't a spontaneous challenge. It was a setup. Krell had sent his star pupil to humiliate her on her first day. With pleasure. She turned back to Vex Tor. "Attack me however you'd like, Lieutenant. Don't hold back." Vex Tor's eyes narrowed. "Are you certain, Instructor?" "Absolutely. In fact, I insist." The Draconian moved with impressive speed, especially for his size. His clawed hand shot forward in a strike that would have shattered concrete. Would have, if it had connected. Before the class could register what was happening, Rowan had sidestepped, used Vex Tor's own momentum against him, and applied precisely calculated pressure to a nerve cluster behind his jaw. The Draconian hit the mat with a thud that shook the entire room, his body completely paralyzed. "This, Wildings," Rowan said, addressing the class while maintaining the pressure point, "is what humans call using your opponent's strength against them. Lieutenant Vex Tor outweighs me by approximately 400 pounds and has natural armor I couldn't penetrate with conventional weapons. None of that matters if he can't touch me." She released the pressure point. Vex Tor gasped as sensation returned to his limbs. The galaxy is full of species stronger, faster, and more naturally armored than others. But combat isn't just about physical attributes. It's about adaptation, awareness, and understanding universal weaknesses. She helped Vex Tor to his feet. Even the strongest warrior has vulnerabilities. Even the smallest can be deadly if they know what they're doing. She turned to face Commander Krell, whose expression had shifted from smug certainty to guarded assessment. "That's what I'm here to teach, Commander. Not how to be the strongest, but how to win regardless of strength. After all, isn't that the point of advanced combat training?" From the floor, Vex Tor looked up at her with newfound respect. What did you do to me?" Pressure point manipulation. A technique developed on Earth thousands of years ago, when humans had to fight predators 3 times their size with nothing but sticks and stones. She smiled. Lesson 1, class, never underestimate a species that evolved on a death world. The silence in the room was absolute. 26 alien cadets and one very annoyed commander were staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to dawning respect. Then a tiny, bubbling voice from the back called out, "That was awesome." The owner of the enthusiastic voice was Mika, a mubbler whose translucent gelatinous body jiggled with excitement. At barely 2 feet tall, Mika was even smaller than Rowan by Academy standards, which probably explained the immediate allegiance. "If the demonstration portion of our class is complete," Rowan said, glancing at Commander Krell, "perhaps we can begin the actual lesson." Krell's forked tongue flicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "By all means, Instructor Parker. I look forward to seeing your methods." He backed toward the door. "I'll be reviewing your progress reports with great interest." After Krell departed, the energy in the room shifted. The students who had been skeptical now leaned forward, curious. Vex Tor, still recovering his dignity, took a seat at the front, his scales a contemplative shade of blue-green. "Right," Rowan said, activating the training room's holographic display. "Let's talk about the fundamental principles of cross-species combat adaptation." Over the next hour, she introduced concepts that had most of the class scratching their various appendages in confusion. Instead of the brute force techniques they were accustomed to, Rowan emphasized leverage, momentum, and precision targeting of anatomical weaknesses. But Instructor rumbled Drav, a boulder-like Petrovan whose silicon-based body looked virtually indestructible. "I don't understand why I would dodge when I can simply absorb impacts," Excellent question. Cadet Zorn, would you assist me in demonstrating? A four-armed quattro named Zorn stepped forward. With methodical precision, Rowan positioned him opposite Drav. Cadet Zorn, please locate the thermal regulation vent on Cadet Drav's lower back. It's approximately the size of your smallest finger. Zorn's forearms moved with surgical precision, finding the tiny opening in Drav's rocky hide. Now imagine applying pressure there during combat. Drav's core temperature would spike by 30% in under 5 seconds. He'd be immobilized, regardless of his natural armor. Drav's crystalline eyes widened. I was not aware that was common knowledge. It's not, Rowan said. But a good combatant studies their opponents. Every species has equivalent vulnerabilities, even quattros. She nodded to Zorn. The nerve cluster where your secondary arms connect to your torso is exposed during certain movements. A precision strike there would temporarily paralyze half your body. The class continued in this vein, with Rowan systematically revealing weaknesses in species that had evolved believing themselves nearly invincible. By the end of the session, she had them paired off, practicing movements that felt awkward and counterintuitive. This is impossible, complained a serpentine Nyx ill-named Thas. My spine doesn't bend that way. Then find a way that works for your anatomy, Rowan replied. That's the point. Adapt the technique to suit your body, not the other way around. As the class progressed, small victories emerged. Mika, the tiny mubbler, successfully redirected a strike from a cadet 3 times her size. Zorn discovered that his forearms gave him an advantage in certain grappling techniques. Even Vex Tor, initially resistant, began incorporating human movements into his draconian combat style. Remember, Rowan said as the class ended, tomorrow we'll add speed drills. Combat isn't about looking good or following rules. It's about staying alive and completing your mission. Class dismissed. As the cadets filed out, she overheard snippets of conversation. Did you see how fast she moved? My third cousin serves with a human on the frontier fleet. Says they're all like that. I heard they call her the human lightning in the combat division. Rowan smiled to herself. Day 1, not a disaster. Now she just had to worry about Commander Krell and whatever he was planning next. 3 days later, Rowan was summoned to the office of Academy Director Philox, a centurion whose 6 eyes could focus on different points simultaneously, a trait that made conversations extremely unsettling for most species. Instructor Parker, please take a seat. 3 of Philox's eyes remained fixed on a holographic display, while the others tracked Rowan's movement. I've been reviewing your teaching methods. I hope you're pleased with the results, Director. My students are making excellent progress. That's a matter of perspective. Philox manipulated the display to show footage from Rowan's classes. Combat training at the Academy has traditionally focused on strength, endurance, and tactical superiority. Your methods appear to emphasize trickery. I prefer to call it tactical adaptation, Director. Commander Krell calls it dangerous subversion of established protocols. He's filed a formal complaint. Of course he had. Rowan kept her expression neutral. May I ask on what grounds? He believes your teaching methods are inappropriate for Academy cadets. Specifically, that you are training them to fight dishonorably. Rowan couldn't help herself. She laughed. Is something amusing, Instructor? With respect, Director, there's nothing dishonorable about staying alive. The techniques I'm teaching have been refined on Earth for thousands of years. They allow physically outmatched combatants to survive and succeed against superior opponents. Yes, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Philox's middle eyes blinked in sequence. Most species in the Academy aren't used to being physically outmatched. It creates a certain psychological discomfort. You mean it hurts their pride? That is a simplification, but not entirely inaccurate. Philox manipulated the display again, showing a clip of tiny Mika incapacitating a cadet 3 times her size. This sort of outcome is unsettling to traditional military hierarchies. Director, with all due respect, our cadets will be facing threats from across the galaxy. Many of those threats won't fight honorably. They'll use every advantage, exploit every weakness. Shouldn't we prepare our people accordingly? Before Philox could respond, the office door slid open, and Commander Krell entered without announcement. Behind him were 3 members of the Academy Board of Instruction. Director Philox, I apologize for the interruption, but when I heard Instructor Parker had been summoned, I thought it prudent to bring the board members who've expressed concerns. Rowan recognized a power play when she saw one. Krell was trying to stack the deck. Commander Krell, board members. Philox's eyes darted between the newcomers. We were just discussing Instructor Parker's teaching methodology. One of the board members, a crystalline luminar named Bright Facet 7, stepped forward. We've reviewed the footage. The concerns are valid. These techniques could destabilize established combat protocols across the Alliance. That's ridiculous, Rowan said, forgetting protocol herself. They're just fighting techniques. They are more than that, Krell said, his voice deceptively soft. They are the democratization of violence. If size and strength no longer determine battlefield superiority, what's to prevent lesser species from challenging established hierarchies? And there it was, the real issue. Rowan's techniques threatened the status quo. Species like the Draconians, who had built their military reputation on raw power, stood to lose the most. Perhaps a demonstration would clarify matters, Rowan suggested. I'd be happy to show the board exactly what I'm teaching and why it's valuable. The demonstration took place in the Academy's main combat arena, with the entire board in attendance. Rowan systematically worked through her curriculum, showing how her techniques could be adapted for any species, regardless of their physical attributes. The key insight, she explained, while demonstrating with Cadet Zorn, is that even the strongest opponent has vulnerabilities. Combat success isn't about being the strongest, it's about being the smartest and most adaptable. She demonstrated how Zorn's 4 arms gave him advantages in certain situations, but created vulnerable points in others. She showed how Mika's gelatinous form could absorb impacts that would shatter other species. She even invited Commander Krell to participate, which he declined with barely concealed hostility. This is all very interesting, Director Philox said when the demonstration concluded, but I remain concerned about the broader implications. If I may, Director. Bright Facet 7 interjected, light refracting through their crystalline form. I believe we're overlooking the obvious. The Galactic Alliance faces threats from beyond our borders, threats that don't adhere to our combat traditions. Perhaps adaptability is precisely what our forces need. A murmur went through the board members. Krell's scales darkened with anger. I move that we continue to monitor Instructor Parker's classes, Bright Facet 7 continued, but allow them to proceed. With one condition, Commander Krell will observe all sessions and provide regular reports to the board. Rowan bit back a groan. Having Krell breathing down her neck during every class was the last thing she wanted. But it was better than being shut down entirely. I accept those terms, she said. Krell's eyes narrowed. As do I, Instructor. I look forward to our collaboration. With Commander Krell observing from the back of the room, Rowan's classes took on a new tension. The commander's presence was like a gravitational anomaly, distorting everything around it. No, Cadet Thas, you're still thinking like a Nix Isle, Rowan corrected, adjusting the serpentine alien's position. Your natural instinct is to constrict, but against certain species that makes you vulnerable. Try the deflection movement instead. From the back of the room, Krell's voice cut in. Cadet Thas graduated top of his clutch in traditional combat. Perhaps his instincts are correct. traditional combat works well against traditional opponents, Rowan replied without looking at Krell. I'm teaching them to fight non-traditional opponents. This pattern repeated throughout the week. Wherever Rowan went, Krell appeared, questioning her methods and undermining her authority. Equipment she had requested mysteriously failed to arrive. Training simulations were altered to favor strength-based approaches. Her class schedule was changed without notice, forcing her to teach during meal periods. Despite these obstacles, her students continued to improve. Zorn, in particular, took to the human techniques with remarkable aptitude. His forearms gave him exceptional control once he learned to coordinate them properly. Instructor Parker, he approached her after class one day, his four hands making the formal academy salute. I've been practicing the joint lock sequence you taught us. I believe I've adapted it for quattro physiology. He demonstrated, his movements precise and fluid. Rowan watched with undisguised pride. That's excellent work, Cadet Zorn. You've not only mastered the technique but improved it. Thank you, Instructor. I've entered the mid-year combat tournament. I thought I might try some of these techniques in competition. The mid-year tournament was the Academy's most prestigious internal competition. Cadets from all specializations competed in various combat formats, with the winners earning significant career advantages. That's a bold move, Cadet. The judges traditionally favor orthodox techniques. Yes, but as you've taught us, adaptation is key to survival. All four of his hands made a gesture that approximated a human shrug. Besides, I'm tired of losing to Vextor every year. The tournament arena was packed when Zorn's match against Vextor began. Word had spread about the human techniques being taught in advanced close combat, and everyone wanted to see if they actually worked in competition. Commander Krell sat with the judges, his expression smug. He clearly expected his prize student to make short work of Zorn. The match began conventionally enough, with both cadets circling each other in the traditional opening stance. Vextor struck first, his clawed hand slashing in an arc that would have disemboweled a less agile opponent. Zorn, instead of blocking directly, redirected the strike with a minimal movement of his upper right arm. What is he doing? One judge turned to Krell. That's not standard quattro combat form. It's human form, Krell spat the word. A perversion of proper technique. But it was working. Vextor's superior strength meant nothing if he couldn't land a blow. Zorn moved with a fluidity that belied his species' reputation for mechanical precision, each of his forearms operating independently yet in perfect coordination. When the final point was scored, Zorn, using Vextor's own momentum to throw him from the ring, the arena erupted in cheers and confused murmurs. A quattro had never defeated a draconian in hand-to-hand combat in Academy history. Krell's scales had darkened to a dangerous shade of purple by the time he cornered Rowan after the match. This is your doing, he hissed, forked tongue flicking rapidly. You've corrupted the purity of Academy combat training. I've enhanced it, Rowan countered. Your star pupil just lost to a cadet he's defeated 3 years running. Maybe the problem isn't my teaching, Commander. Maybe it's your refusal to adapt. She turned to leave, but Krell's next words stopped her cold. The Draconians have led the Alliance's military for 7 generations human. We will not be supplanted by tricks and deception. The High Command will hear about this disruption. Something in his tone made Rowan pause. This wasn't just professional jealousy or cultural pride. There was something deeper at stake. That night, she accessed the Academy records, digging into Krell's background. What she found disturbed her. Before joining the Academy, Krell had served in a specialized unit with ties to the Draconian High Command, a unit rumored to operate outside Alliance oversight. More concerning were his communications, heavily encrypted but showing regular contact with the Draconian homeworld, far beyond what his position required. He's not just an instructor, Rowan realized. He's an operative. Further digging revealed the truth. The draconian military faction he represented feared the spread of human combat techniques precisely because they negated draconian physical advantages. If smaller species could effectively fight draconians, it threatened their military dominance and their plans for greater control within the alliance. The next day, Krell approached her before class, his manner unusually formal. "Instructor Parker, I wish to resolve our differences. I challenge you to a formal combat demonstration before the entire academy. Traditional rules. If you win, I will withdraw my objections to your teaching methods. If I win, you will return to Earth." Rowan recognized the trap. Traditional rules meant draconian advantages, but refusing would be seen as weakness. "I accept your challenge, Commander. With one condition, we both fight as we teach. You with traditional techniques, me with mine." Krell's scales rippled with confidence. "Agreed. 3 days from now in the Grand Arena." As he walked away, Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a terrible mistake. The Grand Arena of the Galactic Defense Academy was reserved for the most significant events, graduation ceremonies, visiting dignitaries, and occasionally trial by combat. Today it was packed with cadets, instructors, and even a few representatives from Alliance High Command. Rowan stood at one entrance, trying to calm her racing heart. Across the arena, Krell performed the traditional draconian pre-combat rituals, his scales gleaming with oil, his movements deliberate and threatening. Director Philox's voice echoed through the arena. "This demonstration will determine the future of combat instruction at the Academy. Commander Krell represents traditional methodology. Instructor Parker represents alternative approaches. The match will continue until one combatant yields or is rendered unconscious." "Do you think she has a chance?" Trill murmured to Mika, who had squeezed into the front row. "She's going to wipe the floor with him," the tiny mubbler replied with absolute confidence. "Combatants, take your positions," Philox announced. Rowan stepped into the circle, her movements calm and measured. Krell did the same, his massive form towering over her. Up close, the size difference was even more pronounced. Krell outweighed her by at least 600 pounds. "Begin." Krell moved with surprising speed, closing the distance between them in a single bound. His clawed hand swept down in an arc that would have split Rowan in half had it connected. She sidestepped, allowing the blow to miss by millimeters. "First lesson," she said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "Never put all your weight behind your opening strike." Krell snarled and attacked again, a flurry of slashes and strikes that drove Rowan backward. She evaded each one, her movements economical and precise. Second lesson: anger makes you predictable. But something was wrong. Krell was faster than he should be, his reactions too quick even for a draconian. When one of his slashes came perilously close to her throat, Rowan spotted the anomaly, a faint blue glow emanating from beneath his scales. Combat enhancement implants, she realized. He's cheating. Illegal in formal competition, enhancement implants gave the user artificially boosted reflexes and strength. Calling him out would stop the match, but it would also look like she was making excuses. Instead, she changed tactics. If Krell was using technology to enhance his natural abilities, she needed to use it against him. Third lesson, she called out, this time ensuring the entire arena could hear. Technology has weaknesses too. She began a complex series of movements, circling Krell and attacking from unexpected angles. Each strike was precisely targeted not to injure, but to overload the enhancement implant sensors. Krell's movements became increasingly erratic as his implants received conflicting data. His attacks grew wilder, his defense more desperate. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the smaller human systematically dismantled the draconian commander's fighting style. "What's happening to him?" Someone in the crowd whispered. "She's creating a feedback loop in his combat systems," Zorn explained. "Brilliant." The end came suddenly. Rowan fainted left, then dropped to the ground as Krell lunged forward. Using his own momentum, she swept his legs and applied pressure to a specific point at the base of his spine directly over the main enhancement implant. Krell crashed to the arena floor with a roar of pain. The implant sparked visibly beneath his scales, its blue glow flickering and dying. "Healed," Rowan said quietly. "Never," Krell hissed. "Then I'll have to demonstrate the final lesson." She adjusted her grip slightly. Even the strongest warrior has vulnerabilities. She applied precise pressure to 3 points simultaneously: the nerve cluster behind Krell's jaw, the secondary cluster at the base of his spine, and a third point where his skull met his neck. The Draconian's massive body went completely limp. "Commander Krell is immobilized," she announced. "The match is over." The silence that followed was profound. Then, starting from the cadets section, applause began to spread throughout the arena. By the time Rowan helped Krell to his feet, his body once again under his control, the entire academy was on its feet. Director Philox approached, all 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "Commander Krell, would you care to explain the combat enhancements we all witnessed?" Krell's scales had faded to a dull gray, the draconian equivalent of extreme embarrassment. "I have no explanation, Director." "I think we both know that's not true," Rowan said quietly. "But perhaps this isn't the venue for that discussion." Later that day, in a private meeting with Alliance security officials, the truth emerged. Krell had been part of a draconian military faction working to suppress human combat techniques. They feared that if these methods spread, their species' natural advantages would be neutralized, threatening draconian military dominance. "The irony," Rowan told Trill later, "is that I wasn't trying to undermine anyone. I just wanted to teach techniques that work for everyone, regardless of species." 6 months later, the advanced close combat curriculum had been completely revised. Rowan now headed a department of instructors, including former students Zorn and Mika, teaching adaptive combat techniques to cadets from across the galaxy. Even the Draconians had come around, with Vex Tor himself serving as a training assistant. "If you can't beat them, learn from them," he'd explained to his skeptical compatriots. As for Commander Krell, rumors placed him on a distant outpost, teaching basic cadet orientation. His replacement at the academy was a human, a development that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. "The thing about humans," Rowan explained to a new class of cadets, "is that we've spent our entire evolutionary history being smaller and weaker than our predators. We survived because we adapted. And that's the most important combat lesson of all. It's not the strongest who survive, but the most adaptable." From the back of the class, a familiar voice called out, "Instructor Parker. Can you show us that move where you dropped Commander Krell? That was awesome." Rowan smiled. "Some things never changed." "Patience, Cadet Mika. First, the fundamentals. Then, if you're lucky, I'll teach you how to drop a Draconian before they even know they've been hit."